Hello, friends. So today is a special day because we are going to be reading a poem. And the poem we're going to be reading today is called The Red Wheelbarrow, and it was written by William Carlos Williams. You guys are probably thinking, hey, I know that name. That's because William Carlos Williams is the name of the main character in our story, A River of Words. So we learned about how he was inspired by nature, how he grew up to be a poet and a doctor. And today we're going to get a chance to see one of the poems that he wrote himself. But before we dig into the poem written by William Carlos Williams, we're going to learn some new vocabulary words. These vocabulary words are going to be important as we talk about poems today and in our exit ticket. So make sure that you're paying extra close attention so you can make sure that you're ready. Our first vocabulary word is line. Now this isn't line like what you draw in our class. This is like a line in a poem. A line in a poem is a single unit of language, one straight space of text, and does not mean a sentence. So over here we have a example of a poem. I'm not going to go through and read it just yet, but I want you guys to look at the different lines that you see. Some of them end with a period, and some of them do not. Regardless if it ends with punctuation, these straight lines that you see are what we call a line in a poem. So if we look at this red box, we see that it has a line. I've counted 16 chicken pox. It stops there, so this is the end of our line. We keep reading though. I cough and sneeze and gasp and choke. That is the next line. So this poem is all about being sick and not going to school. Each line that we read, it's not always a sentence, but each line straight across is what we call a line in poetry. You might notice that these lines are in different groups. When we talk about poetry, we also talk about stanzas. Stanzas are a group of lines. So here at the top, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 lines, and that group of 4 makes up the first stanza. Here, like we have circled, we have our second stanza because we have another group of 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. The group of 4 is called a stanza. Stanzas are usually separated, as you guys see, with these big spaces. So here's stanza 1, and then there's a space before we see our next group of lines for stanza 2, another space, stanza 3, another space, and stanza 4. All stanzas are made up of lines, and all stanzas are a group of lines. Our next vocabulary word, this one's going to be super important today, is depends. The word depends means that something is based on or very important to. So for example, the puppet depends on the strings. The strings are very important to the puppet because that is how the puppet moves. The control depends on the robot, the robot depends on the control. The robot cannot move without the control, so it's very important or based on. Depends is it's going to be a signal word. It's also going to tell us when something, as we see in the definition, is very important or when something is about something. So the strings, like I said, the puppet depends on the strings. The word depends tells us that the strings are important and that the strings are going to tell us about the puppet because the puppet depends on the strings. The robot depends on the control, which means that the control is about the robot because the robot cannot move without the remote. Our next vocabulary word is glazed. Glazed is means very shiny or coated with glimmer. So here we have 2 pictures of things that are glazed. You might have heard the word glazed before if you go get donuts on the weekends with your parents. Some of you might like to eat glazed donuts. Now, the glaze on the donuts is what makes the donuts very shiny. Just like our branch that we see here, the weather starting to get cold, this branch is glazed or coated with glimmer from the ice. Glimmer is when something is shiny. So it's coated with that glimmer that makes it shiny, just like the glaze on the donuts. To practice our vocabulary words, we're going to see these sentences here, and we are going to read each sentence and practice plugging it in. So let's start with number 1. This blank donut is incredibly delicious and looks so pretty. Let's try plugging in the first word. That means that I'm going to take this word down here in fur and I'm going to read the sentence again and say the word when I get to the blank. I'm going to do this with each word to see which word fits the best into the sentence. This infer donut is incredibly delicious and looks so pretty. The word infer, we haven't talked about what it means to infer yet, but we cannot infer a donut. So I'm going to cross out the word infer for right now. Or actually, I'll leave it for right now. We just know that that's not it, but I'll underline it. This depends donut is incredibly delicious and looks so pretty. We know that depends means that something is really important, but we don't know what's important yet. This important about based on donut is incredibly delicious. That just sounds silly. So we tried depends. I'm going to underline it. This glazed donut is incredibly delicious and looks so pretty. We know that the word glaze means shiny, and we know that donuts can be shiny from the glaze. So I think that that is the best word so far. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in my sentence, but I still need to check my last word. This stanza donut is incredibly delicious and looks so pretty. I think glazed is still the best word for this sentence because I learned that stanza is a group of lines in a poem, and that doesn't have anything to do with being shiny. Let's look at number 2. See, I'm going to cross out glazed and I'll underline stanza because we tried that for number 1, and I'm going to switch my color to orange. We're going to practice plugging it in for number 2 just like we did for number 1. Jenny can infer that she should clean her room because her mother keeps frowning at her clothes on the floor. So when we infer, we make a guess. So Jenny can guess that she should clean her room because her mother keeps frowning at her clothes on the floor. Maybe, let's try the next word though. Jenny depends that she should clean her room because her mother keeps frowning at her clothes on the floor. It's probably important that Jenny cleans her room, but she can't depend that she should. That doesn't make sense. We know that cleaning our room is important, but Jenny cannot cannot plan cannot plan cleaning her room on it being important. Even just talking about that is confusing. So we know that that's not the best fit. We've already used the word glaze, so now let's try the word stanza. Jenny can stanza that she should clean her room because her mother keeps frowning at her clothes on the floor. Like I said before, we know stanza is a group of lines, so that has nothing to, in a poem, so it's nothing to do with cleaning her room. If Jenny is taking a guess or thinking about cleaning her room, and her mom didn't tell her to clean her room, but her mom keeps frowning. So based on her mom's frown, Jenny can infer or take a guess that she should clean her room based on her mom frowning. So I'm going to cross out the word infer because we know that we did that one. We only have 2 more. Each depends of the poem is shaped like a star. Each based on or important to of the poem is shaped like a star. That doesn't make sense. Let's try stanza. Each stanza of the poem is shaped like a star. That makes sense because I know stanzas are found in poems, and I know stanza is a group of line in poems. So this makes sense if we're talking about the shape of the stanzas in the poem. So our best answer for number 3 is stanza. And last but not least, let's check out number 4. The boy depends on his mother for help. So that means the help he gets from his mother is important to the boy. That totally makes sense. So for number 4, we can use the word depends. That was a tricky one today, but we found that it fits on number 4 with plugging it in. So now let's read our sentences all together to see how these words sound like when we use them, when we read. This glazed donut is incredibly delicious and looks so pretty. Jenny can infer that she should clean her room because her mother keeps frowning at her clothes on the floor. Each stanza of the poem is shaped like a star. The boy depends on his mother for help. We did a great job plugging in all of those new words into the sentences, and we're going to talk about inferring a little bit more in the next video as we read our poem. Keep in mind the word depends, glazed, and stanza while we read our new poem.